You smell that? I love the smell of Big 12 realignment and conference expansion in the morning. Hey, how's it going, everybody? I'm RC Maxfield here for the Back to 12 podcast. And in today's video, we're going to discuss just that. As Coach Prime and the Colorado Buffaloes are heading back to the Big 12, we'll discuss what that means for the conference and how this is arguably the last nail in the coffin for that conference out west in the Pac-12 that was talking, well, if I got to be blunt about it, a ton of shit when it comes down to the death of the Big 12 after UT and OU left. But instead, it looks like Brett Yarmark in the Big 12 may have put the last nail in the Pac-12 coffin. If you are excited about Colorado coming back to the Big 12 and really just the Big 12 thriving right now when it comes to conference realignment, simply just like the video. That's all I'm asking. I'm excited right now from the standpoint of just being a Big 12 fan, right? Like, we'll talk about it a little bit more in depth later on, but I don't think these past 24 hours can go understated in terms of what it means for the Big 12 long term, in terms of being one of those legitimate conferences long term and propelling themselves into that conversation where maybe you're not getting into the SEC or the Big Ten type of things, but that's okay. But you can still be that third conference in America. And a move like this and being aggressive on the realignment and the expansion of your conference trail was absolutely pivotal. But again, like the video, if you are excited about the Big 12 thriving right now and the addition of Coach Prime and the Colorado Buffaloes. Speaking of Coach Prime, again, he's part of this, but this is one of those things, in my opinion, that is far more complex than just strictly adding Colorado. This was something months and a year planned out. As soon as Brett Yarmark got the commissioner job of the Big 12, he discussed trying to expand and have a national footprint, right? You think about it. They are the only conference in America right now that has a team in every time zone. Okay, so you think about that. Now you want to go and get a little bit more out west now that you got teams out east. You know, you got the West Virginias of the world, the UCS, Cincinnati. You want to have a bigger footprint out west. And going to get a team like Colorado, it basically creates a domino effect, right? That's really what it comes down to, okay? And looking at it, I want to give credit to the people that reported this yesterday. The first one that I saw yesterday afternoon and evening was from Yahoo Sports, the new hire over there in Ross Dellinger. He reported that Colorado would hold a special board meeting for the Board of Regents, and then he went on to say this would be about Colorado leaving the Pac-12 and heading to the Big 12. There has been speculation for months, as I just mentioned, really a year, about who could potentially divvy this up. Is the Pac-12 going to get some schools from the Big 12? Is the Big 12 going to win this out? And when they look left for dead after UT and OU left, right? Well, we have our answer, and it is very clear as Coach Prime and the Buffaloes are headed to the Big 12. And again, Brett McMurphy of Action Network was the one that confirmed this was happening. I'll say this. I've got a couple takes on this, and I'm not trying to get too personal when it comes to the Pac-12, but I find it absolutely hilarious that the Pac-12 had numerous chances to pluck away some Big 12 schools when the Big 12 was left for absolute dead, it felt like, in terms of UT and Oklahoma leaving. But instead, they had this thing where they thought, oh, okay, we're going to, go about this education aspect of things, right? We're going to have this highly touted academic standard or political standing, right? And instead of adding potentially multiple schools like Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, other schools in the Big 12, they do nothing. And what does the Big 12 do? They leapfrog them in the TV deal. First gold star to Brett Yarmark, right? The Big 12 commissioner. And then he's like, okay, then we're going to go add some schools. Second gold star for Brett Yarmark, right? And then overall, you're looking, okay, what can we do now, right? And then you think about everything that they've done in terms of the initiatives internationally, going to New York and having a Rucker Park thing. They're trying to build a culture in the Big 12, something that the Pac-12 just simply doesn't have. Another gold star for Brett Yarmark, right? And then at Big 12 Media Day, he says, hey, we're open to expansion, but it's not like something that, hey, we're pressed about. But here's where the fourth gold star comes in. It is being reported that there was a deadline. It hasn't been confirmed or anything like that, that the Big 12 wanted to hear from Colorado and maybe a potentially surprise other school by the end of July. We're getting pretty damn close here, okay? August is just a few days away. Obviously, Colorado took that offer, if it was true, and ran with it, right? Who's the other surprise team? But you got 4 stars right now if you're Brett Yarmark, right? If he adds another school, and I'll tell you this right now, for people out there that think that the Big 12 is going to stay at 13 teams, you are unequivocally wrong. There is a 0.00001% chance that the Big 12 stays at 13 teams for the 2024 football season. It's not a question of when, it's more of who is going to join the Big 12 at this point. And there's so many options. I think the most likely one, if they were to go to 14, is Arizona, because again, Brett Yarmark has talked about it ad nauseum during his time as the commissioner of the Big 12. Basketball is relevant in this conference, and Arizona is by far the best remaining school out in the Pac-12 that has a elite basketball program. Don't look at what they did in March Madness last year, but hey, it's true. Historically, they do have that, right? Now, if you ask me again, and I've had multiple people on Twitter ask me about this, RC, who do you think makes the most sense outside of Arizona, right? And before we get into that, I want you guys to tell me this before we get too much in depth. What other schools do you want the Big 12 to add? So let me know. How many teams do you want to go to? Is 14 cool with you? Do you want to go to 16? Do you want to go to, say, 20, right? Like, let me know, because there's been multiple other schools that the Big 12 has done their diligence on in terms of potentially adding them to the Big 12. It's just, again, a matter of who's next when it comes to Colorado, because they're not going to stay at 13 teams. Simple and plain. If somebody tells you that, they don't know ball. It's that simple, okay? They're going to add at least one more team to make it 14. It's just, do they go more in the Big 12? And I want to hear from you guys. What other schools do you want the Big 12 to add alongside of Colorado? Let me know. Listen, I think when it comes down to it, the Pac-12 is easy to nitpick right now. They're left for dead, right? Like, the Big 12 gave its, last nail in the coffin, if you want to talk in that kind of sense, right? So the schools outside of Arizona who I do think makes the most sense right now, right? You got Arizona State. Do they tag along? Right? Make it 15. And then at that point, you got to add another one. Is it Utah? Right? I'll tell you this right now. The 2 big fish that I am most interested to see what happens, and I don't think the chance is high that it does, but I do think there is a chance. And if we've learned anything from this Big 12 realignment and the Big 12 resurrecting themselves like the Undertaker gift after UT and OU decided to leave, I don't question anything, or I don't rule anything out. Simple and plain. The 2 schools that everybody, I feel like, wants to know about are Washington and Oregon. And I'll say this, if there is any interest whatsoever from the Huskies or the Ducks to join the Big 12 100% wants to do that, okay? They would 100% take them. I think in a dream scenario, right, the most ideal scenario in all of this, right, is the Big 12 probably goes to 16 teams, and they get Arizona, Utah, Oregon, and Washington. I think that's probably the dream scenario. But if we're going crazy and we're just going to say, hey, let's go to 20 and make this a mega conference, the dream scenario there, in my opinion, is you get the 4 corner schools, right? So you get all the Arizonas, Utah, and Colorado. I already got Colorado, so that makes it 16. Then you get Oregon and Washington, right? In a dream mega conference scenario, I think you add 2 other teams, and that's Gonzaga for basketball and then UConn on the East Coast. That way you've got 4 schools over there, and then you've got 4 or 5 schools over on the West Coast actually out there, right? Like, I think that's probably dream scenario. Most likely scenario, in my opinion, is that you add Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah, and you make 16. That's probably what the most likely scenario is. But again, if somebody tells you that the Big 12 is going to keep 13 teams, they're wrong. They're just going to add another one, and it's more of a matter of who and when at this point, not if. But again, you love the smell of Big 12 realignment and expansion. They were left for dead, folks, on a national level. And instead, Brett Yarmark and crew over there in Irving, Texas, at the Big 12 headquarters in Las Colinas, came around and said, nah, we're not left for dead. We're just going to go try and be the third best conference in America in terms of revenue. And hey, now you get Coach Prime, you get more eyeballs. Now you've got a future Big 12 game on national TV to kick off the college football calendar in Colorado and TCU and Fort Worth. That'll be fun to watch. Maybe, just maybe, in week 2, you have another Big 12 matchup when Oregon comes to the 806 to face off against Texas Tech and the Red Raiders in what should be a top 20 matchup. Who knows? Once again, I got 2 things to ask you before we get out of here. Like the video if you were excited to see the Big 12 realignment and Colorado being added. It's a big day right now for the Big 12 as they are thriving right now. Job's not finished for sure, but they were left for dead again just 2 years ago. Not anymore. Now they're thriving. And then what other schools do you want to see the Big 12 add when it's all said and done in conference realignment? I am RC Maxfield reminding you, if you want the latest Texas Tech news and rumors all year long, and hey, we'll be talking about Big 12 stuff too. Here on Fridays on the channel, we're going to have a Big 12 betting video every week during the year discussing the best bets. I'll be keeping track of my bets in terms of my percentage of winning to help you guys out and everything like that all year long. Simply hit that subscribe button to stay in the know right here on the Back to 12 podcast channel.